1. I am by no means an expert or pro at revenge, but I am a patient person. 7 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to buy my own place. I had saved for 10 years, worked my butt off, and I was so happy to be able to have a place to call my own. Now, being a single person on the mortgage meant that I had to make compromises. One such compromise was buying a property on a shared block, a lot cheaper. Where I'm from, this usually means on a strata title. For some, that's a bonus, as it means there's a communal fund for repairs. Typically, insurance is cheaper as it's collective, and other things like maintenance being taken care of. Strata titles also come with a lot of bylaws and restrictions on what you can and can't do. I'm a pretty private person and introverted person, so having to deal with people and have limits on how I live was a no-no. I took my time, found the perfect property, shared block but freehold title. Only thing was that I needed to pay public liability insurance for the shared walkway on the property, split equally between owners. The real estate agent is local to my area. There is also about 3 degrees of separation between us. He has friends who are friends with my friends type of thing. Didn't know him, but knew of him. So that sort of felt good too. About 5 months after I move in, I get a knock on the door from the owner, the landlord of the property next to me, to discuss insurance. Not a problem. I ask for a copy of the policy so I have a record. It gets sent through, and lo and behold, it's for strata insurance. I was incredibly confused, and after much back and forth, the property isn't a freehold title, but a strata title. I called my lawyer and conveyed the title, etc. He was dumbfounded over it all, but did the right thing and made things as right as he could. I arranged for a meeting with the real estate agent. I brought emails and printouts of the ads they had, all saying it was freehold. Emails between the real estate agent and my lawyer discussing its freehold status. Despite it being in the absolute black and white, he refused to accept any fault or offer anything to make things right. I don't begrudge that. He is looking out for himself. I get that. However, I wouldn't forget it. I did enter into mediation with the real estate agent, and all I asked for was, when the time came for me to sell, they'd do it or cover the costs. I thought that was reasonable, but they flat out refused and offered me $1,000 to go away, which I refused. I had the option to pursue them legally, and was advised by the mediator to do so, but ultimately I decided against it for a few reasons. The main one being my health at the time. So I planned and plotted, and I schemed and connived as to how to get back at this son of a bitch. And I settled on this. I found his personal Facebook page, which wasn't set to private, saw some photos of a boys on tour trip he went on a few weeks prior, so about 5 to 6 months after I bought the property. I also found his address through a business registration search. On the anniversary of the sale, for 6 years straight, I sent them flowers with a note. Dear real estate agent, remembering you on this, our special day. She has your eyes. Love, L. They varied ever so slightly over the years, but always had on this our special day, and some weird inference to a love child and a desire to reconnect. I also, from time to time, arranged for postcards and letters to be sent from another country. The one he was on tour in, always signed Loved L. I learned about 3 weeks ago that this guy had recently divorced, lost his home, and is no longer working as a real estate agent. His wife had found out he cheated on her. The story I was told through friends of friends went along the lines of, he would get weird gifts and flowers every year, same day every year. She, his wife, finally put 2 and 2 together, and realized what the date was, and he admitted to cheating on her. Now, I didn't mean for this, but it turns out a year before I bought my house, he had gone on holiday, came back with an STD, gave it to his wife, but somehow convinced her that it wasn't him. As such, our special day turned out to be right around the time he'd have been balls deep sans condom in someone who wasn't his wife only 1 year earlier. He's apparently lost his house, half his retirement savings, and also his business. I do feel a little guilty about all of it, sometimes. But then I'm reminded that he's a scumbag, and that karma, like me, is a patient, spiteful, and vengeful bitch. 2. So a while back, I had been hired to be the marketing person for a family business. It was a fitness equipment liquidator that had been founded by a gold medalist Olympian. He had fallen into some mental health issues and had delegated his wife to take over the business. She didn't have the experience, but took the reins anyways, and she and her children ran the place, albeit with some success. So this is where I come in. The first red flag I should have seen was that she was trying to screw over the recruiter by wanting us to do a side deal to pay me technically less, but still more than I would have gotten without the recruiter as a middle person. But I was in bed, and I didn't think too much about it. The next thing was how embedded the family aspect was in this business, that there was basically no distinction between the employees and family affairs being wrapped up in their work environment too. But I was just happy to finally be in a space where I felt welcome, and almost love-bombed by the CEO, who treated me like one of her own children. Always lots of hugs and even kisses during good morning meetings, as if we were coming downstairs for breakfast. Meetings ended up turning into brainstorming sessions because the CEO's children and the workers were so scatterbrained and didn't want to commit to any specific plans of action, and I was basically on my own when it came to any marketing or anything because nobody would actually participate if it came down to it. About a month into it, I get ambushed by the CEO and her daughter, who was like the operations person technically, or something. Both were wondering why we hadn't achieved as much as I had wanted to when I explained that I didn't really receive much help or participation from anyone. Suddenly, it became all about blaming me for everything wrong, and why sales were down and why nothing was exponentially growing as she had hoped they would. I explained what actions I had taken, and that I was doing exactly what I said I was going to do. It wasn't my fault nobody wanted to help when they said they would. It didn't matter. They wanted me gone because they expected the moon in 3 weeks' time with zero budget and zero help from anyone else. So I just left. I want to add, I did a lot while there. I automated a lot of their processes that they were doing by hand, set up Salesforce and Slack, as well as setting up the handling Zendesk and a ticketing system, and even automating a lot of point-of-sale processes so that from card tap to accounting, it was all smooth and seamless, and I had made tons of things very efficient for them, and improved productivity while there. But none of that mattered, of course. They wanted double the sales from basically social media posting and nothing else. While I was there, I had documented tons of OSHA violations, exposed wires where customers would walk, ADA violations, customer safety violations, forklifts operated with zero certification and no PPE, and having employees standing on the tops of forks just to reach the warehouse ceiling. With no safety anything, structural violations, you name it, they did landlord special type fixes and left things in often worse states than before. I made the call, and sent OSHA photos of what I had documented, which I had only documented in the event of needing to use it. Never actually expected it to come to that, but I did. After talking with them, it was explained to me that there was a months-long process to get actions to be taken, even with evidence. The penalties for the violations I had evidence for were financially crippling fines I knew they wouldn't be able to handle. And after months of checking every now and then, I got confirmation that action was taken. Then a couple of months later, I drove past the warehouse and showroom and saw that it was abandoned. Broken letters, overgrown grass in the parking lot, boarded up windows and doors, for lease. All gone and dilapidated. While I was placing those calls, I was also reaching out to my realtor friend, who's super good at what she does, saying that we should time it right, so after these fines and penalties, that she can drop literature off at their door until they're convinced to sell. She didn't do it in time, but she did catch wind that the house had been sold, and fast. Their website was 404, and they basically packed their bags and left. I still can't believe it worked, but sometimes in life we have to accept that we are the karma that someone has coming to them. Goodbye, Amy, wherever you and your family left to. We're even. 3. I'm a mid-level manager for my company. My duties mainly revolve around marketing and managing our e-commerce websites. Because of my position, I sometimes get customer service calls escalated to me, which means if I'm talking to a customer on the phone, they're usually not happy. I received a call from a customer who was very upset, demanding a return authorization and shipping label to send back a product she recently purchased. According to her, we had sent the wrong product. Now, I'm more than happy to accommodate customers, and certainly understand mistakes can occur in fulfillment. However, this lady was extremely combative and uncooperative from the jump. I asked her to read me the model number of the product she received, common troubleshooting in this case to identify where the mix-up occurred, and she immediately spat back the same model number on her receipt. When I told her the model she read was the same as what she ordered, she rudely said, "You've screwed up," citing the product was not as advertised. At this point, I was calmly trying to explain to her how the product should function, as I could tell she was older and possibly just didn't understand how to get it to work the way she expected. I didn't want her returning the product she ordered, only to purchase the same model again and having the same problem. She wasn't having any of my attempts to help. Within a couple of seconds, she passed the phone off to her husband, who wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. He demanded a return authorization and shipping label, and in the 2 minutes it took to put that together for him, I got to sit through his tirade of insults before I could end the phone call. Multiple times through this jaunt, he complains about the cost of shipping, how he better get his shipping refunded, and he'll be damned if he has to pay return shipping too. Whatever, it was done. Sometimes you get rude customers. I move on with my life. Fast forward a week or so later, the return package arrives. Inside of it is not the product the customer ordered. In fact, it's not a product our company handles at all. My guess is the customers purchased a lot of similar products around the same time, and they confused the product they received from another company with the one they ordered from ours. We sent them the correct product the entire time, and the one they returned was probably incorrect. They just had the wrong company to return it to. I figure when I originally asked the lady what product she received, she was just reading back from the receipt, not actually bothering to check the box to see if she had the wrong company altogether. Normally, in a situation like this, we would send the product back to the customer and close the return, but I remember the crap I had to take from this couple, and I'm feeling petty. So I called the customer and pointed out the product they returned wasn't what they ordered, and asking how they'd like to proceed. I got the initial lady I spoke to on the line at this point. She is clearly not showing any more humility or respect toward me, even after being told the fault was their own. She tersely tells me to send it back. Sure, I say, knowing exactly where this is going. All I need is to know how you'd like to handle shipping. Would you like to send a shipping label, or should I charge your credit card? Oh, it was glorious. Within a minute of arguing with her, her idiot of a husband was on the line telling me I can't charge him to ship back his product. He then goes on to admit what I expected all along. He needs the products he sent to my company to return to the company he actually bought them from. I'm effectively holding the package hostage. I let him know we're perfectly willing to send it back, but since we covered the shipping to get an unwanted package into our building, we're not covering shipping to send it back due to their mistake. He huffs and puffs, but knows he's beat, since he made a very rude version of the same argument a week ago to me, and says he'll get his wife to handle it. That was over a month ago. The package is still sitting on our shelves with his return information. Likely well out of any return period from the original seller. Haven't heard from the dynamic duo since. I smile every time I pass it in the warehouse. Hellfreezer's note. If you were feeling even less generous, you could argue that by them sending the wrong product back to you and keeping the original while still expecting a return, That's theft. Just saying. 4. I'm a 21-year-old woman. I'm in college and take a class introducing life skills to students. I'm at least 2 years older than my other classmates due to not taking my Gen Ed courses till now. We had a lesson on budgeting, and my group had a single man with no kids that made quite a bit a month to set a budget for. Now, I have made some pretty poor financial decisions, especially this past year, so I took this assignment as literally as possible because I need the practice. This girl in my class, 18, wanted to get all the expensive stuff for this person, wanted a 3-bedroom house, new expensive SUV, and luxury designer clothes. The person was a computer programmer. All of us agreed, except her, to do it the way I wanted. Middle of the line, across all boards, because he makes enough, but he's single with no kids, and there's no use in anything but a 1 or 2 bedroom rented apartment, and, like, clothes from JCPenney? Growing up, Ross and JCPenney and Old Navy and all those were nice stores. I have never once thought of them as less than or cheap. And she got so mad because she believes that JCPenney and all those stores are cheap and basically donated nasty clothes. I just ignored her comments here and there because maybe she was just blessed and has led a very privileged life. My dad easily makes over the normal salary a year, but I was never raised knowing that. I was raised very humbly, and actually thought there was a time when we were poor because we were heavy couponers. We lived off the dollar menu, and hand-me-downs were before going shopping. The entire class, she was just rude and disrespectful and talked bad about people that have to struggle financially. I lost my apartment last year due to really stupid financial mistakes, but I just kept my mouth shut and let her rant because that's her, not me. We walk out of class, and I'm walking behind her, as she's just mocking me, saying I'm stupid for thinking $500 is enough for a month after everything has been paid, including groceries and streaming services. Literally everything. This is just $500 sitting around. The guys she was talking to didn't say anything, just laughed, and she said, "I swear, if I was that broke, I'd just go strip. That's why I'm marrying rich." When I tell you, as soon as she walked away, all those guys started laughing at her and talking about her. I shouldn't have laughed or felt so much satisfaction from it. Talking bad about anyone, no matter what, shouldn't be a thing. I say this as I'm talking about the whole thing. I know I'm hypocritical. I didn't even have to say a word. And this girl embarrassed herself thinking she was making fun of me, but she also lost a lot of respect from the people she was trying to make fun of me with. Sometimes people show you who they are and what their priorities are. Hers were different than mine, and that's okay. Just don't make fun of me, because then it reflects poorly on you, not me. Hope the girl has the day she deserves, whether it be the day she thinks she deserves or the day I think she deserves. I want her to have a good day. People are stupid sometimes, and she's probably just led a really privileged life, or even if she's had a bad one, just has different views. I just don't appreciate being made fun of for trying to do the assignment the best way I can, to use it for future reference, because I know I struggle with money. 5. I work at a university that has campuses around several locations in my state, in addition to the main campus. The campus where I work is one of the smaller locations. In the year or so before the pandemic hit, the university began implementing some pretty severe budget cuts. Our associate dean saw the writing on the wall and was able to secure a job at a different school in a different state. Next, our campus dean was pushed out. Both of these losses were painful because they were both wonderful people, very approachable, easy to talk to, trying to work with faculty and staff to look for solutions for any problems that popped up. With typical large institution administration logic, now that the dean was gone, it was time to hire a new dean? I'm sure there was new wording in the job description, but it's still stupid in my opinion. Enter one of our faculty members, GP, or Giant Prick. He has a rating of 2 out of 5 on Rate My Professor. The rating distribution is 2 votes for awesome, 1 vote for great, 3 votes for good, 1 vote for okay, and 10 votes for awful. A common theme of his reviews is that he was rude, condescending, and unapproachable. I didn't know about these ratings until later, when I had my own unpleasant interactions with him, so when he applied for and got the position of interim campus dean, I didn't have any strong feelings one way or the other. This would quickly change. The G in GP doesn't just describe the depth of his prickishness, but also his physical size. He's easily 6'6", 1.98 meters, perhaps a bit more, and probably 350 pounds, 158 kilograms. Not a small guy, but there's nothing about him that is a gentle giant. He is definitely not above using his size to intimidate people, including one of our tiny and sweet English professors who is maybe 5'1" and 101 pounds. As I said, this professor is incredibly sweet and kind, never had a bad word about anyone, is soft-spoken, just an overall pleasant person. I heard from one of the dean's suite staff that this professor came in one day to discuss something about one of her classes for the upcoming semesters, and he blew up at her. She tried to retreat from his office, but he just stalked after her, yelling at her. The other staff members said the bigger and louder he got, the smaller and quieter she got, and she's already so small. The professor never interacted with him again. Again, this is something that I learned about later. I'm not as small as that professor, but I'm not much bigger either. Additionally, I'm neurospicy. I'm sensitive to loud sounds and confrontation, not helped by the fact that my father shook me and screamed at me when I was a colicky baby. It's a wonder he didn't do permanent physical damage. But for at least the next month, any time I heard a male voice, I would start screaming in fear. Add to that a pretty severe anxiety disorder, well, you can probably tell my interactions with GP weren't going to be pleasant. There were 3 separate times that he bit my head off. One, I admit I wasn't exactly in the right, but the way he handled it was extremely unprofessional. The other 2 cases were things I was 100% in the right about. I don't want to get into specifics because I don't want him to find this post and know who I am. But one thing to know about GP is he likes to do his blowing up in person or on the phone, so there isn't a record of things he says. He stomped to my office once, red-faced and glaring, slamming my door shut, and confronted me. I was in panic mode and used all my de-escalation techniques to cut off his fuse before he blew. Thank goodness it worked. But by that point I went from loving my job to looking for other opportunities. Time passed, and the university posted the permanent position for GP's interim position. Thing is, GP was unqualified. He'd never had administrative experience other than his interim role that he got in on as a fluke. I learned later that the search committee wasn't even going to advance his application to the final pool, except for a regional higher-up who, for some reason, went to bat for him, basically forced the search committee to add him to the list of finalists. I learned later that this higher-up even gave him the interview questions in advance and coached him on his answers to try to guarantee him the position. She is one of those administrative soot types who waltzes onto campuses to attend meetings, is typing on her phone throughout the meeting, then breezes off with an air of superiority. A very big fish in a little pond mindset. I wasn't on the search committee, but I was in a group of campus employees who were asked to meet with the search committee to discuss the applicants. There were 4 total, including GP. Applicant 1 was very professional and well-spoken. Applicant 2 was also really good. Applicant 3 struck me as someone who didn't quite understand what his role actually would be with the job. And GP. GP barely put much effort into his answers. The words themselves were okay, but his behavior, made it seem like it was all a waste of his time. That he was entitled to the position, etc. In fact, because the pandemic fell under his watch and we, like everyone else in the world, had to change the way we do things to get through, he literally used the words, "I think I deserve this position." When I learned later that he had received the questions beforehand and had been coached, it made total sense. He truly believed that he had this job in the bag because of that higher-up. She wasn't even based in our campus, but seemed to think she knew who was the right person for the job. Back to the meeting with the search committee. There were, I think, 3 representatives from the search committee and maybe about 6 of us from the campus there. to give our feedback on the presentations the candidates gave. I was prepared to give glowing reviews on applicants 1 and 2, talk about my concerns with applicant 3, and maybe not say anything about GP at all. Remember, I fear confrontation to a fault. Before we really got started, one of the other staff members spoke up. "Before we get started, I believe the person who gets this position needs to have the temperament to yada yada yada." I don't remember what it was he said after that because my brain latched onto the word temperament. Why had he used that word? Is he perhaps referring to GP? All this time I thought I was the only one who had had bad interactions with him. I was probably just misinterpreting it. Or was I? We went around speaking about the different candidates. As we talked, I started having an anxiety attack because I was slowly coming to the decision that I needed to say something. If I wanted someone other than GP to have this role, then I needed to do what was in my power to make that happen. And the thing that was in my power was to speak my truth. I raised my digital hand, and when I was given the floor, my face flushed with nerves. What I'm going to say, well, one of the candidates has an advantage because we know him, but perhaps that is a disadvantage as well. Then I began to talk about my concerns with his behavior that I had personally witnessed. To my surprise, I saw every single one of the other attendees from my campus nodding their heads. This was the moment that I realized that the problem with GP was more widespread than I initially thought. After I said a few things, my other colleagues began to tell their own experiences. My anxiety eased as others told their stories. I felt so validated. I thought I'd been allowing a handful of bad experiences with GP, coupled with my sensitivity to loud noises, large, aggressive men in confrontation, to prejudice me against him. But what I was hearing from my colleagues changed everything. As you might have guessed, GP did not get the permanent position. What I learned later is that the regional higher-up, the one who had coached GP, tried to throw her weight and authority into forcing the search committee to choose him. Thankfully, the search committee chair held his ground and finally had to resort to threatening legal action. She backed off. And we have a lovely new dean. GP went back to just being a faculty member. He taught for a year or two, then took a leave of absence. I heard he had trouble with his wife and with alcohol. I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me. The work environment in the dean's suite relaxed considerably. One day a month or so, after the search committee meeting, the colleague who'd mentioned temperament came into my building. We got to talking, and I told him that his use of that word prompted me to start speaking up about GP's toxic attributes. He said, "I thought you were really brave for starting that conversation." Me? Brave? My heart had been pounding so hard, my chest tightening, all the hallmarks of a growing anxiety attack. I told him I very much appreciated that. Speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 375, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you'd like to support this channel, then you can join memberships here on YouTube, where we have 3 tiers for you to choose from, and we also have a Patreon page where you can essentially just pay what you like and get early access to the videos. We also have a merchandise store linked in the description, and you can also leave a tip if you'd like to do that too. Never required, but I do appreciate it. Okay, no other bits and bobs today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And today's answer comes from Newcomb via the Discord server, linked in the description. And their question was, what fad seemed odd to you? My answer to that was leg warmers from the 80s. I'm sure there's probably a practical reason, but wouldn't socks do just as well? I mean, they look kind of cute on some people, I suppose, but it's just a sock with no foot. Maybe I'm not retroing hard enough. I do like the 80s style quite a bit, but I think you guys knew that about me. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 199. And this was, would you prefer longer days with more days off, or shorter days altogether with no days off? I think the longer days with more days off afterward would be better. Gives you a chance to rest properly, but let's see what other people thought. And today's answer comes from Witchy Nicole. Longer days. I could get more done, and maybe time would not feel like it's going so fast as one day bleeds into another, and a month becomes an entire year gone. That is truer the older I get, really, isn't it? Thank you very much for your answer, Witchy Nicole. And with that, well, the sun is up, the birds are chirping, other things are probably happening. So I'm going to go to bed. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.